Greetings, brothers and sisters. I am Father Aaron Leach, and welcome to our very first discussion as voted by our sponsors over at Patreon. I'd like to give a very big shout out to all of the wonderful people that have joined our Patreon family so far. You folks, along with our customers and our clients through Doc Souls, as well as the fans of our writings and our artwork, you guys make all of this possible. You support our channel, you support our work, and we want to thank you from the bottoms of our hearts. And if you're just joining us on YouTube, that's wonderful as well. Welcome. If you decide that you'd like to become a member of our Patreon family, I will leave a link in the description. You will gain early access to videos and the ability to vote on the topics we cover, just like in today's discussion, as well as higher tiers will grant you discounts at the store, access to our classes, and things like that. So it would be wonderful to have you guys join us over there. Now, today's subject might seem a little bit on the nose. We're going to be talking about healing magic, and here we are in the middle of a global pandemic. It seems obvious, but the strange thing is that the vote on this was taken before this viral outbreak even began. So it just seems strange. We had a lot of really good subjects being voted on. Some of them were very hermetic. Some of them were grimoire, talking about the Holy Guardian Angel. One option was even just an Ask Me Anything kind of thing. But for some reason, more people wanted to talk about healing. And that does make sense. We are all part of the Western mystery tradition, and healing has always been central to what we do. Not just the Rosicrucians, who are charged to heal and to do that freely, but going all the way back to the earliest tribal shaman, whose job was to heal sick members of his tribe, to journey into the underworld to retrieve their lost souls and bring them back to their bodies. Or even in ancient Sumeria and Babylon, where the art of exorcism was perfected. It was originally a medical profession. People would get sick, and they would go to the temple to have the demons of sickness expelled from them. And this is actually why exorcisms often involve things like baptism and washing with water and purifying, because it was intended to heal the person who was afflicted. So whether you're a wizard or a witch or a conjurer, root worker, no matter where you come from, we all have one thing in common, and that is the central tenet, the goal of what we do is to heal not just the self, but to help those around us, to heal those who are sick, whether it's sickness of the body from injury or disease, or whether it is sickness of the spirit or of the mind. We do everything we can do to make people around us better and to help them through what is often, and as we're learning right now, is often a very dangerous world. And so we have to do everything we can do. Now, I know from the discussion in the Patreon group that what you guys are really wanting to hear me talk about is healing magic, casting spells, making talismans, and we're going to talk about that. But I don't want to focus only on that. You see, the subject of healing is a very comprehensive subject. It involves a lot more than just casting a spell or making a talisman, okay? There's a lot. If you're going to be using healing magic, you're talking about becoming a healer. And becoming a healer is a very big responsibility. It has dangers. We're going to cover some of those. And I would like to cover just several topics, several subjects here to kind of give you a launching pad and something to move forward from if healing is what you're wanting to do. So I've made some notes, and there are certain specific subjects that in my own path, as I was working on becoming a healer myself, these are things that I learned, and I consider them vital to the practice. Now, where it comes to the arts of healing, I have found two subjects to be almost indispensable. And these are mainly for you, although they will also apply to your clients. We'll talk about that. But the two subjects are yoga and meditation. Without these two, I don't think anything else could be possible. When everything goes wrong in my life, when I'm having a crisis of faith, when I just can't even make myself come into my temple and address the deities that I work with, and I'm just emotionally distraught. These two practices, yoga and meditation, I can always come back to them. They're like my foundation. They don't require any emotional connection. The yoga physically feels good. the meditation also feels good and calms the mind. So these are two very foundational practices. And if you're going to become a healer, you're going to need both of these. Honestly, you need them for almost everything, whether you're a healer or if it's just magic or if you're just living a mundane life. Yoga and meditation should still be something that are foundational to your own spiritual practice. Now, I have encountered some people that don't like the idea of learning yoga just for the stretches and the breathing and leaving aside the Eastern philosophy and the deities that go with the tradition. But I have to admit, my approach to yoga has always been more of that type. I was interested in the health aspects. I was interested in what it could do by helping me channel energy and let energy flow through me. And while I have studied Eastern religion and philosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, even the Tao Te Ching is one of my favorite texts. It just never was the basis of my interest in yoga. So I am one of those people. I make no apologies. But yoga is so very important because let me tell you something. You are going, at some point, you are going to have an accident. You're going to slip. You're going to sit in a chair wrong. You're going to be in a car accident. Something is going to happen to each and every one of us that's going to wrench our back. And the difference between whether you are going to recover from that kind of injury or whether you're going to spend the rest of your life in chronic pain can come down to your practice of yoga. There have been several times, in fact, in my life that I have done exactly that. One time learning to dance, I injured my lower back. One time, and actually I injured my lower back trying to learn a particular dance, and then we had to move. So I actually had to carry heavy boxes and stuff after the injury. So it was bad. And I had several people tell me, that this is the kind of injury that you're just going to live with for the rest of your life. And in fact, because I had practiced yoga for years up to that point, and because I was practicing yoga through it and afterward as well, yoga was not only what made me limber enough to take the injury and heal from it, but also yoga was instrumental in repairing the damage afterward and getting back to normal. So this is not even negotiable. If you want to live with chronic pain, then you can just let your muscles become tight and your joints immobile. And when you take that fall, you will regret it. So make a regular practice of yoga. And just like me, if you don't necessarily want to follow all of the Eastern practices, I don't really think that's necessary. It may inspire you to learn more. In fact, that's a lot of the reason why I did learn more about Eastern philosophy. But learn the stretches, learn the positions, and do them on a regular basis. Learn the breathing. Where it comes to healing, you're going to be doing a lot of energy work, a lot of manipulation of energy, and you're not going to be able to move that energy if you yourself are bound up tight and your muscles are tight and immobile and your joints are immobile. So get a yoga practice. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular, and it doesn't have to be anything obscure. If you've been on a sports team, if you've been in a martial arts class, any of these things, the coach or the teacher will always have you start the session by stretching out, and that's yoga. That is the basis of yoga, is making sure that your muscles are stretched and ready to work and be twisted and do a lot of things that would otherwise injure them. So your coach always wanted to make sure you were supple and ready to take on what they were about to throw at you. So keep that in mind. And if you have to, just go back to those stretches you did, before whatever sports event you were participating in, or if you're a martial artist, then this conversation shouldn't even be necessary, obviously. But do your stretches, do them every day. It's going to make things safer for you, and it's going to help you manipulate energy when you're trying to heal others. It's very similar to the way my own spirits have requested that I unbind my hair and take off my wedding ring whenever I'm doing magic, because they want the energy to be able to flow without anything binding me. And it's the same thing with the yoga. If I have not done yoga, if I've not stretched and gotten my body loose, then that also makes a difference. And my spirits aren't really happy with that either. So, I mean, I just cannot stress enough that yoga is something that you need to practice. Now, where does this help your client? Well, obviously, you're healing them. You need to manipulate energy, I've already said. But remember, too, once you learn it and once you get a good regimen going and you've been doing it every day for a long time, then you're going to meet people who have certain joint and musculature issues that you will be able to help them with, because you will be able to teach them postures. Like great example. I personally, through sleeping on a very bad mattress for a while, I ended up with a bad lumbar or sciatic nerve problem in my lower back, and I was able to use yoga to very slowly. I went out and I learned new postures, actually, that are specifically meant to address lumbar pain. And I have been able to. I'm not healed from it entirely. It's actually a work in progress, but I'm to the point now where I'm not suffering from it much more than when I am. And when I am, it's usually because I've slacked off on doing the stretches and the yoga. So this is something that you'll be able to teach others who are having problems, and that's going to be a very important part of healing, is giving advice and being able to demonstrate those kinds of things. Now, very closely related to the subject of yoga is the art of massage. They have very similar goals when it comes to healing. So you could even think of massage as kind of a yoga that you're performing on another person. When you perform yoga on yourself, when you do the stretching, you are stretching your muscles, you are squeezing toxins and impurities out of them. You are causing them to release kinks and tightness and learning to relax. And massage is doing the same thing for another person. You have to move the toxins out. You have to actually, muscular tissue has a very peculiar way of responding to being stretched, pulled, rubbed, and these are the kinds of things that, when we're kids, it's taken care of by just running and jumping and swinging from trees and playing in the playground and rolling in the dirt and having a lot of fun. But as we get older, we tend to get what they call sedentary. We sit in an office all day. We sit on a couch at home, and our muscles tend to bind up on us. So yoga is the way that you can fix that you can replace that. Running and jumping and swinging, now you're doing these specific stretches. And with massage, it's the same way. Someone has muscles that are bound up and joints that hurt. You can give them some relief by rubbing and squeezing the toxins out of those muscles and causing that tissue to let go and to relax. And again, these are techniques that you will learn for yourself, and then you can teach to your clients, so that if they are having specific problems with their joints and their muscles, you can tell them this is what you need to do to address that area and make things feel better. So those are definitely very foundational to a practice of healing before you even get to the subject of magic. Now, another thing that's very important in almost the same vein, and we're still kind of in an Eastern area here, actually, because the next thing is meditation, as I mentioned earlier, yoga and meditation. And by meditation, I want to make it very clear that I'm not talking about what we in the West often call meditation, which is meditating on something, having a thought or a series of thoughts and exploring them through as we silently sit and contemplate them. And in fact, that is the proper term for that, is contemplation rather than meditation. But what I'm talking about is silence of the mind meditation. They call it calm abiding meditation, or even single-pointed meditation. It is an art that you have to learn. It is a process to follow, whereby you very, very slowly turn off the inner voice that is always rambling in your mind, always telling you what the next thing you should say or do should be, or always having some fantasy, or living a memory or thinking about the future. Meditation, single-pointed, calm-abiding meditation, silencing the mind. I liken it to going to sleep, but you're still awake. And I actually give a class on this. We will probably be adding it to our Doc Solomon's class. But if you don't want to wait for that, I can put a link in the description to my blog where I actually have already written up a class on calm abiding meditation. And I give the various relaxation techniques that I use, as well as the methods I use to very slowly quiet the mind. One stage, actually moving down through the various levels of consciousness until you turn everything off and you're just sitting in pure silence. This is very important for both yourself and for your clients as well, because again, this is something you can teach your clients to do. When the problem is not physical or an injury, the problem can be something mental. It can be personal problems they're going through. It can be obsessive thoughts, and this is very integral to turning that off. I also liken it to rebooting a computer. It's like what they call a warm reboot of a computer. You have all of these processes, all of these thoughts, these fears, these ideas, these hopes and dreams and worries, and all of this is just going on inside your mind all the time. And meditation is a way that you can turn all that off and get back to the very basic level of consciousness. And then when you come out of your meditation, that's turning things back on. That is the reboot. You're now in this much calmer state and a much quieter state of mind. And you can now go out and interact with the world in this calmer state of mind. And that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is the secret to meditation. It's not just something you're supposed to go to some retreat somewhere and meditate for hours and hours a day for a couple of weeks and then come home and it's done. You want to meditate, it should be a daily practice. And it may not always be. It may be something you return to from time to time. But it should be a regular practice, one way or the other. And it is your chance to reboot. It is your chance to turn off all the processes that are going on inside of you. And it allows you to see things better. It allows you to feel better and think better. Now, I do want to give a very, very big warning about meditation. This is something I actually stumbled on myself. And I didn't even know that it was a more universal issue until I heard of people going to these meditation retreats where they go through very intense courses of meditation. And then they come home, and I've heard of people having very bad emotional problems, and I've even heard of suicide resulting because, again, it's like rebooting a computer. I mean, if there are problems with the computer and you reboot the computer, it can actually make things worse. You know, like they say, if you have a virus, you don't turn the computer off and back on. That may be what it wants you to do. But meditation is very powerful, and as I mentioned before, you are moving through your various levels of consciousness, and you can encounter things inside of your mind, things that you repress, things that you've locked away, you don't want to think about. And by going through these processes, you can encounter them, and it can be very emotionally devastating. But even beyond that, and this is where it's really dangerous, folks, because you may not encounter any of that. You may enjoy the meditation, and you may not know anything is wrong. And this is what happened to me. I became aware that as much as I was enjoying my meditation, it was making all of my emotions stronger and more intense. Not just good feelings, but also when I would get annoyed or angry, it was making it much more likely for me to fly off the handle. So I had to learn on my own, because books and teachers didn't really ever cover this back then, that there are times that you may need to back off. If you feel that your emotions are getting too intense, stop the meditations for a few days. Give yourself a week off or so, and then you can come back to it. And it's just like the yoga. It's just like the massage. You don't just push it, and do it all at once. You want to do it very slowly and gradually. And that way it will make you feel better, and it will heal you rather than contributing to further damaging you, okay? So that's my big warning on meditation. But other than that, other than the intense emotions, other than encountering things that you would rather not encounter, and it's still a very pleasant practice. You will find that once you get into it, and by that I mean regularly doing it, daily or at least every couple of days or so, you'll find you start craving it. You'll find that you'll be upset, you'll be stressed out by life's day-to-day problems, and you'll find yourself thinking, God, I wish I could just get away and go meditate for a while. So it's a very good thing, but just like anything, you can overdo it. And I just want to make sure that you guys have that warning so that you know it's there. And if you're going to get into meditation and preach its benefits to clients, they also need to know. You also need to be able to warn them. And I've had my own clients who, are having big problems, and they tell me, "Oh, I meditate every day and I don't know why it's not." And I tell them, "You got to stop. Back off. You're too unbalanced right now. You just need to take a break. Don't meditate for a little bit, and then come back to it and do things slowly." Okay, so take everything that we talk about here. You want to take things slowly and gradually increase, rather than trying to do it all at once. Now, let's move on from the things that you'll learn first for yourself, and let's talk about actually administering healing to other people. And the first subject I want to cover on that is herbology. Start learning what plants are good for treating which ailments. You want to get yourself a pill capper machine, and you want to start gathering ingredients, like licorice root and echinacea, things that are anticoagulants, things that are coagulants, things that are antibiotic. I mean, all of this stuff exists in nature, and you want to start learning how to apply those things. Now, I want to give a very big warning here as well, and this is a really big one, guys, because I do not want to encourage anybody to think they are a doctor, okay? To think that they can prescribe medicine, herbal medicines for ailments. Number one, if you're going to be a healer, the first number one rule is you, and what you will tell your clients, is to go to a doctor first. Even if you don't like doctors. I'm not the biggest fan of our modern medical industry, and some of the doctors that work in that industry are not very trustworthy people. But that doesn't mean they don't entirely know what they're talking about. If you have certain symptoms and the doctor recognizes and has something that they can prescribe that will help, then do that. And then the role of the healer is to come in after that. Okay, here's what the doctor has you doing, and now here's what we can do to help, with these other aspects of what you're dealing with. You never want to try to take the place of a doctor, and for both health and legal reasons, you cannot be perceived at all as prescribing anything. Okay, look at it. If someone is sick with a particular sickness, and you know of an herb that is good for that, and you prescribe, not prescribe, but you suggest to them that they make a tea of some sort, or they take herbs in a pill form or something. Look at it as the same as like telling someone who's got the cold to drink chicken soup. Okay, you're not a doctor giving a medicine, but you are attempting to make them feel better, and you're trying to give them something that will help. Okay, so you can only give them suggestions, and don't ever suggest anything to anyone without telling them first, find out what a doctor has to say. Then you can go from there, okay? So learn your herbology, and right on the heels of that is that you should learn some herbal alchemy. Now, you may not know this, but alchemy did not begin as an art of refining lead into gold, or as finding ways to extract the essence of metals. It actually began as an art of learning how to extract the essence of plants. And it goes all the way back to the ancient tribal shamans, when their spirits would say, take this plant and this plant, combine them together, and cook them in this way. Teas, for example, go back a very long way. So learn some herbal alchemy. Learn how to extract the mercury, that is the medicine, from plants, and that's very powerful to learn. And what I found was it increased my understanding not only of the plants themselves, the medicinal values of those plants, But it also helped me understand alchemy, the metallic alchemy that arose later, and a lot better. And it helped me understand really a lot more about most of the magic that I was studying, whether it's from the Grimoires or from the Golden Dawn. There's an alchemical basis to almost everything that's being done. Alchemy is the process of performing in a lab what, in a short time, what nature would do on its own in a lengthy time. So you really are learning the processes of nature by learning alchemy. So if you're going to study herbology and you're going to learn what plants are good for, then you also need to learn the alchemical processes of extracting that essence and making what the plant already does on its own, make it do it better and stronger. So that's definitely a subject you're going to want to look into. Now, our next subject, let me check my notes here. Actually, we're going to go on into healing magic now. Now, I don't really want to give you guys specific spells. I am going to talk about a couple of them, but it's not. I want this to be more universal. You know, it doesn't matter what tradition you're coming from. I want this to be useful to you. So what I'm going to do is talk about things a little broadly here. I want to talk about which occult forces we should be addressing for the arts of healing. How you address those forces will be covered by your own tradition. I know how we do it in the Solomonic system, so I may be a little kind of lean toward that in the things that I describe. So bear with me on that. But you can replace what I'm saying with what you do in your own path. Now, for instance, in my path, we focus very heavily on the planets, and a lot of Western occultism does. The various powers of the planets are what we call upon with whatever we're doing in magic. And when it comes to healing, you've got different choices. Now, a lot of people want to go straight to Mercury. Mercury, the archangel of Mercury is Raphael, whose name means the healer of God. He's the divine physician. So if you need healing, it makes sense to go to the healer of God. So people tend to go to Mercury. Mercurial symbolism and Hermetic symbolism, like the staff of Hermes, to this very day is the symbol of the medical profession. You see that winged staff with the serpent on it on the sides of ambulances and on the fronts of hospitals. So the relationship between healing and Mercury does go back a very long way. But Mercury, very specifically, is associated with medicines, doctors, hospitals, institutions, and that kind of thing. So if someone is suffering something that they are trying to get treated, if someone is taking a medication, if someone is dealing with a doctor or a hospital and all the bureaucracy that goes on there, that's where you want to bring in Raphael or mercurial entities or the Mercury force. Okay, so it's very focused on medicine. Like, for instance, I talked about herbal alchemy. That is definitely a mercurial subject. But you may be dealing with someone who has, let's say, an infectious disease, an infection or a virus, like a lot of people have, unfortunately, right now. And what's becoming very popular is to invoke Mars for those kinds of things, because Mars is something that will go on the attack, that will purge the evil out of the body. So Mars is definitely something that you can call on there. In the Key of Solomon, the second pentacle of Mars is actually described as, "This pentacle serveth with great success against all kinds of diseases, if it be applied unto the afflicted part." So this does go back a very long way. So if something needs to be aggressively attacked in the body, then Mars is who you want to go to for that. There's also the option of going to the sun. There's a very close relationship between Mercury and the sun in occult literature. They have a lot of the same attributes and virtues, and healing is definitely one that they both share. The Archangel Michael, for example, is sometimes placed in the sun, and sometimes he's placed in Mercury because of the similarities. And Michael It's a little more obscure in Western occultism, but Michael has had a very long tradition of being an angel of healing in his own right. You may be familiar with the famous Castle of St. Michael. I want to say that right. It's the Castle Sant'Angelo in Rome. And it has a statue on top of it of the Archangel Michael drawing his sword. And this statue is actually a recreation of a vision that the people of Rome had during the plague. It was a mass vision, very similar to the visions of Mary, but in this case it was Michael. And the city was suffering the plague very badly at the time, and they had this vision of Michael standing on top of this building, drawing his sword. And after that vision, the plague began to dissipate, and people found relief from that within the city. So they all credited Michael with being the angel who had healed them by bringing the power of the sun with him. And they erected that statue to commemorate it, and it still stands there to this day. So much like Mars, Sol is something that will purge darkness and evil out of the body, so diseases and things that harm. It's not for injury, it's for things that need to be cast out. So you can employ Sol in much the same way. I would generally use Sol, the sun, for just basic things. I don't want to say basic things, but for flus and infections and that kind of thing. But Mars would be more aggressive. I would invoke Mars for cases of cancer, and like with this coronavirus thing, the second pinnacle of Mars that I mentioned. People who make talismans are saying that second pinnacle of Mars right now is just flying off the shelves for them. They can't even keep up with the number of people that want them. But if you take that and inscribe it in steel or iron, and you do it at the right astrological time when Mars is strong in the sky, then you will have something that will help attack from within you what is trying to attack you. So it's kind of like declaring war on what is attacking you. Soul is more of a shining divine light and burning away what is inside you. So I use that. I use that. Like, I've used it for myself even. I've used it when I have like just really bad influenza that just won't let go. One story I have is when I was younger, I was working a lot with the Babylonian deities, and I had a flu that it was about 3 weeks, and it showed no signs of letting go, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I did this ritual with Shamash, the god of the sun, and I finished the ritual, and I would say maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, my nose just started. You know how when you're sick, your nose will just start, just gushing, and you got to run to grab a tissue as quick as you can. And I did. I ran to a bathroom, and I grabbed a big wad of toilet paper, and I blew, and I swear it was like my entire brain came out of my head. I mean, it was more mucus than I had probably ever seen at that point in my life. But afterwards, I mean, I just felt better, and I could already feel that it was over, and I started getting better. So Soul is definitely well suited for that kind of thing. So those are the three forces. Now there are others. There are some talismans to Jupiter that will bring health, really any of the 7 planets, depending on what the problem is. Let's say someone has been poisoned. Well, Saturn is in charge of poison, so then Saturn could be called to heal the person of the poisoning. If a person has mental problems, what they used to in the old days call lunacy. The reason I call it lunacy was because it was associated with the moon. So the moon can actually be invoked to help with somebody that is suffering lunacy or mental imbalances. So really any planet. Venus, we have an entire range of diseases that are named after her, venereal diseases. So that is a good force to invoke for those kinds of diseases. So it has to be case by case, and you have to understand what the planets are in charge of, and then invoke the right planet. Okay, but the 3 big ones are going to be Mercury for medicines and doctors and hospitals, and then either Mars or Sol as purgatives, to attack anything that's attacking you. Now, my go-to ritual for doing this kind of thing when it comes to making talismans to help people is an 8-day ritual that I found in a book that's published by Avallonia Press. And it's actually 2 books in one. It's called A Collection of Magical Secrets and a Treatise on the Mixed Kabbalah. And in that second half, the Treatise on the Mixed Kabbalah, that's where you get the 8-day ritual for the consecration and the enlivening of a talisman. And one of the main goals that it says you can use those talismans for is for healing. These are actually supposed to be made in wax. You can make them in metal, but the process that is given is 8 days of melting and reforming the wax. You begin the process on the day of the particular planetary force that you want to be foremost in the talisman. So if you're going to make a Raphael talisman, you would start on a Wednesday. And then it's from Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Each day you invoke the angel of that day to empower the talisman. And then on the 8th day, you return to that first angel. So you would return to, in our example, Raphael on the 8th day. And that's when you would complete and inscribe the talisman. One of the things that the text gives that I think is just an incredibly awesome idea is to take your knowledge of herbology and plant alchemy and combine it with this. And this is specifically for injuries on the body, something that a salve would be put on to heal. And these are actually instructions for making a healing salve. So you take the same process, the same 8 days of constant, powerful consecration and purification, but you also mix in some herbs that will help heal the person of whatever malady they're suffering. And then at the end of that, rather than forming the wax and the herbs mixed together into a disc and inscribing it, the text says to just leave the wax partially melted and very pliable. It still has the same consecration, the same power, but you then use that partially melted wax as a salve, and you put that on the injured part of the body and wrap it up, and then you can say prayers and do that kind of thing over it. But in a way, it's like taking a talisman and creating a salve out of it, or making a salve into a talisman, however you want to look at it. So I thought that was just something that I wanted to bring up with you guys, because it's just a fascinating idea to do. But if you're not present with the person, if you're doing this long distance, then you will, of course, want to make it into a talisman. Or if it's for an ailment that a salve isn't going to help with, if they have the flu, or if they have the coronavirus, or if they have something like that, other than, I guess, spreading it on their chest for respiratory infections and stuff might help. But in most cases, in those instances, you're going to want to make into a full talisman. So just make sure you choose the proper planetary force for the proper goals that you need. And your go-tos are going to be first Mercury, and then this goes back to what I said about always involving the medical profession. So that is also very good for Mercury work. You want to you're actually invoking the Mercury to help the doctors. So this is something that works in tandem. And the same with Sol and Mars and Venus and Saturn and any other example we come up with for all 7 of the planets. It is very individual. It should work with modern medicine. It's not a replacement for it. And then, of course, you have some different options you can follow. The Treatise on the Mixed Kabbalah is a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. And as I mentioned, there's a great talisman. There's more than one talisman in the Key of Solomon, which is intended for healing. So honestly, I think that should pretty much cover it. I think I've kept you guys here long enough. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in for this discussion on healing and health and magic. And I hope it was informative to you. And I guess we are on YouTube, so make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring that little spirit bell down there, and it will summon us to your inbox whenever we post new content. So that's it for tonight, folks. Blessed be.